I was driving home from work when my phone started exploding with missed calls. Not from family, from banks, lawyers, and one number marked county records. When I finally answered, the woman on the line said something that made my hands go numb. According to official documents, I had been legally declared dead 3 weeks ago. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, a clerical error, a scam, anything except reality. I pulled over on the side of the road because my hands were shaking too badly to keep driving. The woman on the phone kept talking, calm, professional, like she was discussing a parking ticket. She said my death certificate had already been processed, that my social security number was flagged, that my assets were frozen. And then she asked me a question that made my stomach drop. "Sir, are you calling to dispute your own death?" I laughed. I actually laughed. That hollow, disbelieving laugh you make when your brain refuses to accept what it's hearing. "Yes," I said. "I'm very much alive." There was a pause on the line, a long one. Then she said, "In that case, you need to come down here immediately. And you may want to contact a lawyer." 3 weeks. That's how long I had been dead. For 3 weeks, I had gone to work, paid for groceries, picked my daughter up from school. While on paper, I did not exist. I drove straight to the county office. Every mile felt unreal, like I was driving through someone else's life. When I arrived, they ushered me into a small room and slid a folder across the table. My name was on the front. Inside was my death certificate, correct full name, correct date of birth, correct social security number, cause of death, complications following an accident, date of death, 3 weeks ago, place of death, local hospital. I stared at it, waiting for my brain to reject it as fake, but didn't, because at the bottom of the document was a signature I recognized instantly. My sister's. Her name is Emily, and until that moment, I would have told you we were close. Emily had always been intense, controlling, the kind of person who framed manipulation as concern. After our parents died, she took it upon herself to help me manage my life, my finances, my schedule, my daughter. She especially loved reminding me that I was a single father. "You need support," she'd say. "Men can't do this alone." I didn't realize back then how much she hated the fact that I was doing just fine without her. I asked the clerk how this was even possible. She explained it slowly, like talking to someone in shock. Someone had reported me dead, provided hospital records, signed the necessary affidavits. Someone had access to my personal information. Someone who knew me very, very well. Emily. I left the building feeling like the ground wasn't real anymore. But the worst part? This wasn't just about money, or identity, or legal nightmares. Because when I checked my phone again, I saw 3 missed calls from my daughter's school, and a voicemail. "Hello, this is the administration office. We're calling regarding an urgent custodial issue. Please contact us immediately." That's when it hit me. If I was legally dead, who did the law think my daughter belonged to? I called the school back, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. They told me something that made my blood run cold. That earlier that day, a woman had come in with documents, that she claimed to be my daughter's legal guardian, that according to their records, I was deceased, and custody had already been transferred. I dropped my phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the wall, as one thought repeated over and over in my head. Emily didn't just kill me on paper. She took my daughter. And that's when I remembered something she had said to me months earlier. Something I had laughed off at the time. "If anything ever happened to you," she'd said, smiling, "don't worry. I'd raise her better than you ever could." The police station smelled like old coffee and paper. That's where I went first. I walked in holding my own death certificate like it was some kind of sick joke, expecting someone to laugh and tell me this was a mistake. No one laughed. The officer behind the desk looked at the document, then at me, then back at the document. "You're supposed to be dead," he said quietly. That sentence hit harder than I expected. They took me into a small interview room, asked me questions I never imagined I'd have to answer. Where was I 3 weeks ago? Did I have any accidents recently? Had I been hospitalized? Then came the question that changed everything. "Do you have any relatives who could benefit from you being declared deceased?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said one word. "My sister." They explained the situation bluntly. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a clerical error. This was identity fraud, falsified medical records, and illegal transfer of custody. Serious crimes. But the problem was time. Emily had done this by the book. She had filed paperwork in multiple offices. She had waited the legally required periods. She had produced witnesses. By the time anyone questioned it, everything was already in motion, including my daughter's relocation. I demanded to see her immediately. That's when the officer told me something that made my chest tighten. "She's not with your sister right now." I froze. "What do you mean she's not with her?" He hesitated. "She's staying with a temporary guardian until the court finalizes the placement." My daughter was with strangers, because on paper, I was a corpse. I called Emily, straight to voicemail. I texted her. Nothing. Then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. Emily worked in hospital administration, not as a doctor, not as a nurse, but in records. It suddenly made sense. She knew how the system worked. She knew who to talk to. She knew which forms mattered and which didn't get checked too closely. The hospital records attached to my death certificate, they weren't forged from scratch. They were altered. Someone had taken a real patient's accident report and changed the identifying details. A patient who had died the same week, and Emily had signed off on it. I left the station feeling like I was running out of air. So I did the one thing I thought might help. I went to a lawyer. He didn't sugarcoat it. "Legally," he said, tapping the folder, "you're dead." I stared at him. "You're standing right in front of me," he continued. "But until we reverse this, the system doesn't recognize you as a person." I asked him how long it would take. He didn't answer immediately. Weeks, possibly months. I slammed my hand on the desk. "My daughter doesn't have weeks." That's when he told me the worst part so far. Emily hadn't just taken custody. She had filed an emergency motion, claiming I had been unfit, that I had been mentally unstable before my death, that my daughter had been living in an unsafe environment. She had attached statements from people I knew, people who had no idea what they were signing. My neighbors, a former co-worker, even my daughter's teacher. Emily had framed it as a routine welfare check. "Just sign here," she'd said. "It's to make sure she stays with family." I felt sick, but nothing prepared me for what came next. The lawyer leaned forward and lowered his voice. "There's another document here." He slid it across the table. It was a request for permanent guardianship and adoption. My vision blurred. "She's trying to adopt my daughter?" I whispered. He nodded. "She claims it was your dying wish." I left the office shaking. I sat in my car for nearly an hour before I noticed something. A small envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in my daughter's handwriting. "Dad, Aunt Emily says you're in heaven, but I don't think heaven is supposed to be this scary." And on the bottom, in smaller letters, she told me not to tell anyone. I read the note at least 20 times. Every word felt like a knife. My daughter's handwriting was unmistakable. Slightly uneven letters, the way she always wrote her D too big. That note wasn't staged. It wasn't fake. She was scared, and someone had gone out of their way to make sure that fear reached me, which meant one thing. Emily wanted me to know. I couldn't go through the system. Not the courts, not the police. Everything moved too slowly. So I did something stupid. I tried to see my daughter on my own. I tracked down the address of the temporary guardian through a friend who worked in social services. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to make him uncomfortable enough to help. The house was in a quiet neighborhood. Too quiet. The kind of place that looks safe from the outside, but feels wrong the moment you step onto the sidewalk. I parked down the street and waited. An hour passed. Then I saw her, my daughter, walking up the driveway, holding the hand of a woman I didn't recognize. She looked smaller. Her shoulders were hunched. Her hair was tied back too tight. She wasn't talking. I stepped out of the car before I could stop myself. "Hey," I said softly. Her head snapped up. For a second, she just stared at me. Then her face went pale. "Dad," she whispered. She ran toward me, and before I could reach her, the woman grabbed her arm. Hard. "Get back here," she hissed. My daughter started crying. That's when everything exploded. The woman screamed. Someone called the police. And within minutes, I was on the ground, hands behind my back. They treated me like a ghost, like an intruder, like someone who shouldn't exist. "She's dead," the woman kept saying. He's not her father. I was arrested for attempting to abduct my own child. At the station, things went from bad to worse. They ran my name. Nothing. No active ID. No valid records. As far as the system was concerned, I was impersonating a deceased person. That's when the officer asked me a question that chilled me to the bone. If you're not dead, he said slowly, then whose body was buried under your name? I hadn't thought about that. Someone had been buried as me. Someone real. They released me hours later, but only because my lawyer intervened. He warned me not to do anything else reckless. I nodded. Then I did something even worse. I went to the cemetery. My name was carved into stone. My date of birth. A date of death that meant nothing. I stood there staring at my own grave, trying not to throw up. That's when I noticed someone standing behind me. An older man. Hospital uniform under a jacket. He looked at the gravestone, then at me. You shouldn't be here, he said. I asked him why. He swallowed. Because I helped fake your death. His name was Daniel. He had worked the night shift at the hospital 3 weeks earlier. He told me Emily had come to him crying. Said her brother had died in an accident. That she just needed help making sure everything was processed correctly. She had authority, access, and she had promised him something. Money and silence. But that wasn't the worst part. Daniel told me about the body. The real one. A man who had died alone. No family. No visitors. Emily had chosen him because no one would question it. No one would miss him. I asked Daniel why he was telling me this now. His hands were shaking. Because of your daughter, he said. She comes to the hospital sometimes. My heart stopped. With Emily? He nodded. She waits in the hallway while your sister talks to people. And every time she sees me, she looks like she wants to scream. Then he told me something that still wakes me up at night. Your sister doesn't let her sleep with the lights off, he said. She tells her, you watch her. I felt something break inside me. Emily wasn't just erasing me. She was using my death to control my daughter. Before he left, Daniel handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here, he said. Records, messages, edits. I asked him why he hadn't gone to the police. He looked away. Because Emily told me something. What? That if anyone talked, you'd stay dead. I didn't go home after the cemetery. I sat in my car with the engine off, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers went numb. The flash drive felt heavier than it should have been, like it carried more than just files. I kept thinking about what Daniel had said. She tells her, you watch her. Emily had turned my death into a weapon. I drove to my lawyer's office and waited until morning, pacing the parking lot like a criminal. When he arrived, I handed him the flash drive without saying a word. We watched everything together. Emails, edited hospital records, internal messages. It was airtight. Forgery, bribery, fraud. But what stopped us cold was a separate folder, labeled, for court. Inside were audio recordings. Emily's voice, calm, gentle, talking to my daughter. You know your daddy is very sick now, Emily said softly. He can't come back. There was a pause, a small, trembling voice. Did I make him sick? Emily sighed. No, sweetheart. But sometimes people leave when it's too hard to take care of children. My lawyer muted the audio. I felt like I was going to throw up. There were more recordings. Emily telling her that I had chosen heaven over her. That I had given permission for Emily to become her new mom. That if my daughter talked about seeing me, it meant she was confused. One recording ended with Emily whispering, if you keep saying you see him, they'll think you're sick too. That's when my lawyer said something I didn't expect. This isn't just custody manipulation, he said quietly. This is psychological abuse. He looked at me, and the court will care about that. We filed an emergency motion that same day. But Emily moved faster. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered. Emily didn't yell. She didn't cry. She laughed. You're really making this difficult, she said. I demanded to know where my daughter was. She sighed like I was exhausting her. She's safe, Emily replied. Safer than she ever was with you. I told her I had proof. That people were talking. She paused, then said something that still terrifies me. You don't understand, she said softly. You're not supposed to come back from being dead. The line went dead. The next morning, everything collapsed. Social services showed up at the temporary guardian's house. But my daughter wasn't there. Emily had taken her, without permission. Without notice, she had vanished. An Amber Alert was issued, and for the first time, the police believed me. But by then, Emily was already hours ahead. I got another message that night. A video. My daughter sitting in the back seat of a car. Her eyes red from crying. Emily's voice off camera. "Tell him," she said. My daughter hesitated, then whispered, "Daddy, Aunt Emily says if you find me, you won't be my dad anymore." I dropped the phone because I finally understood the truth. Emily didn't want custody. She wanted replacement. She wasn't stealing my daughter. She was trying to erase me completely. The Amber Alert went out at 3:17 a.m. Phones across the state buzzed at the same time. My phone buzzed too, but I was already awake. The police set up a task force. Road cameras, license plate scanners, every possible exit out of the county. Emily's car showed up once, then never again. She knew exactly how to disappear. My lawyer called me just after sunrise. "We found something," he said. Emily had filed paperwork weeks ago, not just for guardianship, for relocation, out of state. She had claimed my daughter needed a fresh start. New school, new identity, new name, and that's when the pattern finally clicked. Emily wasn't improvising. She had been planning this for years. I went back through my memories with her. Every comment, every joke, every moment she insisted on being alone with my daughter. She had always corrected her. "No, call me Moling. Real moms don't leave. You don't need to remember everything." I had brushed it off as awkward affection. It wasn't. It was grooming. The police traced Emily's phone to a small town near the state border. An abandoned property, once owned by our parents. A house I hadn't been to since childhood. Emily had inherited it. I insisted on going with them. They didn't want me to, but they needed me, because Emily had left a message. For me, the house was dark, boarded windows, no power, the kind of place that feels like a bad memory. Inside, the air was cold and quiet, too quiet. They found my daughter's backpack first, then her shoes, then her jacket. My heart stopped. They found Emily in the basement, sitting on the floor, rocking, holding a framed photo, a photo of me. My daughter was upstairs, locked in a room, alive, shaking, holding her knees. She ran to me the moment she saw me. She wouldn't let go. She kept whispering the same thing over and over. She said, "You died because I wasn't good enough." Emily didn't resist arrest. She just kept repeating one sentence. "I fixed it. I fixed everything." Later, during interrogation, the truth finally came out. Emily had lost a child years ago. A daughter, stillborn. She never told anyone. She had been diagnosed with severe, untreated postpartum psychosis. And when she saw me raising my daughter alone, something in her broke. She wasn't supposed to be his, Emily told the detectives. She was supposed to be mine. They charged her with kidnapping, identity fraud, child endangerment, psychological abuse. But as they led her away, she looked straight at me and smiled. "You'll never unteach her what I taught her." And she was right, because my daughter still wakes up screaming, still asks if I'm real, still checks to make sure I'm breathing. The courtroom didn't feel real. It felt staged, like everyone was playing a role they had rehearsed, except me. Emily sat across the room in a light-colored blouse, hands folded, posture perfect. If you didn't know what she had done, you might have thought she was the victim. She avoided looking at me, not because she was ashamed, because she didn't need to. The judge began listing the charges: identity fraud, kidnapping, child endangerment, psychological abuse. Each word hit hard, but Emily didn't react, not even when they mentioned my death certificate. Then her attorney stood up, and everything shifted. He didn't deny the documents. He didn't deny the recordings. Instead, he asked a single question that made the entire room go quiet. "Is it possible," he said calmly, "that the man claiming to be the father is not who he says he is?" I felt my stomach drop. My lawyer objected immediately. The judge allowed it. Emily looked up for the first time and smiled. They presented new evidence. Medical records I had never seen. Psychiatric evaluations. Dates that didn't make sense. Her attorney painted a picture. A man with emotional instability. A history of dissociation. Someone capable of believing he was alive, even if he wasn't legally recognized as such. Then came the worst blow. They called a witness. A doctor. From my past. I recognized him instantly. a therapist I had seen after my wife died. Years ago, he testified that I had suffered severe trauma, that I had episodes of disconnection, that I had once expressed fear of disappearing. The courtroom murmured. Emily's lawyer leaned in. "Doctor," he asked, "in your professional opinion, could this man believe he is alive while legally and psychologically being unfit to care for a child?" The doctor hesitated, then said yes. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. This wasn't about the law anymore. It was about my sanity. My lawyer whispered something to me. They were trying to do something unthinkable. If they couldn't prove Emily was right, they would try to prove I wasn't real. Then the judge said words I will never forget. "Given the complexity of this case, I am ordering a temporary suspension of parental recognition." My heart stopped. That meant custody was still undecided. And then came the final blow of the day. The judge turned to my daughter and asked her to speak. She stood slowly. Her hands were shaking. She looked at Emily, then at me, and for a moment, I saw fear on her face. Real fear, not of Emily, of telling the wrong truth. She opened her mouth, and before she could say a word, Emily whispered something, too quiet for the microphones. But I saw it. My daughter froze. Her face went blank, and she sat back down. The judge called a recess. The room erupted. My lawyer grabbed my arm. "This is bad," he said. "She still has control over her." As we were leaving the courtroom, a court officer stopped me. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Anonymous submission," he said, "delivered this morning." Inside was a single document, a hospital report, different from the others, with one line circled in red. Time of death, officially unverified, and handwritten beneath it. If he isn't dead, then who was? The recess felt longer than the trial itself. I watched my daughter through the glass in the hallway. A court-appointed counselor sat beside her, speaking softly, offering crayons and paper like none of this mattered. My daughter didn't draw. She just stared at the floor. Every few seconds, she looked up, searching, not for Emily, for me. My lawyer pulled me aside. "She conditioned her," he said quietly. "Fear triggers. Phrases. Looks." I asked him what Emily had whispered. He didn't know, but he guessed. When court resumed, the judge ordered a private interview. No parents, no lawyers, just the child, the judge, and a recorder. I wasn't allowed inside. That wait broke something in me. When they finally returned, my daughter wouldn't look at me. Her statement was read aloud. She said she wasn't sure anymore, that sometimes she remembered living with me, and sometimes she remembered me being gone. She said Emily told her memories could be wrong, that adults decide what's real. Emily's attorney leaned back, satisfied. Then my lawyer stood and did something I didn't expect. He played a recording. It wasn't Emily's voice. It was my daughter's, recorded secretly by a therapist during an emergency session, legally admissible. My daughter whispered, "And Emily says if I talk about Dad, he'll disappear again." The room went silent. Emily reacted for the first time. Her jaw tightened, her hands clenched, but she still had one card left. They called another witness, someone I hadn't seen in years. My mother-in-law. She testified that I had been distant after my wife's death, that I struggled to connect, that Emily had been a second mother to my daughter. It hurt, because it wasn't entirely false. Then came a moment that changed everything. The judge asked a question. "Mrs. Carter, did you ever see the child harmed while in the father's care?" She hesitated. "No." "Did you ever fear for her safety?" Another pause. "No." Emily's narrative cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. But then the judge turned to me and asked something I wasn't prepared for. "Mr. Carter, do you know who was buried under your name?" I said no. The judge nodded, then said, "Because we may." They brought in a forensic investigator. He explained that the body buried under my name had no DNA match on record, no family, no identity, but there was one anomaly, a burn scar on the left shoulder. My stomach turned, because I had a burn scar from childhood, same place. The investigator looked at me. "Is it possible," he asked, "that this body was mistaken for you?" The courtroom buzzed. Emily smiled again. Then my lawyer stood up slowly and said the words that stopped everything. "That scar," he said, "was surgically removed 10 years ago." Silence. Pure silence. Emily's head snapped up. For the first time, She looked afraid. The courtroom felt colder than it had before. Emily sat rigidly, eyes flicking to me, then to the judge, then back to me. Her perfect calm was cracking. I could see it. The smallest twitch of a lip, a flicker of panic behind her eyes. My lawyer leaned over. "They finally have something," he whispered. "The forensic report. It's going to turn this whole case upside down." I gripped my chair, trying to steady my hands. The investigator took the stand again. He explained slowly, deliberately. The body buried as Mr. Carter. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. It was not fully identified. The documents attached were fabricated. DNA testing is pending. However, the burn scar indicated someone had tried to match a specific physical characteristic to Mr. Carter, misleading the authorities. He looked directly at Emily. It appears someone went to extreme measures to ensure the body could be mistaken for the deceased father. The courtroom went silent. Emily's attorney tried to intervene. "Objection. Speculation." The judge banged the gavel. "No objections at this time. Continue." Then the investigator dropped the bomb. There is a recorded statement from the hospital staff confirming that a body was selected specifically for its similarities and altered to appear as Mr. Carter. Witnesses claim it was a deliberate plan to declare him legally dead. Emily's face went pale. Her lips quivered. The whispers in the courtroom grew louder. I finally realized the truth. She hadn't just stolen my daughter. She hadn't just faked my death. She had built an entire illusion of my death to manipulate the world around her. Then my lawyer did the unthinkable. He revealed the flash drive from Daniel, the hospital worker who had risked everything to help me. Files, emails, recordings, messages. Every step Emily had taken was documented. The room absorbed it all in stunned silence. Emily tried to speak, tried to explain herself. I was only trying to protect her from. The judge cut her off. "Enough. Your reasoning is irrelevant in light of the evidence of manipulation, kidnapping, and fraud." But she wasn't finished. She leaned forward, voice low, almost a whisper. "If you take her from me, she'll never forgive you. She'll forget you. She'll believe she never had a father." Her words were a threat, not to the court, to me. Then came the final, most shocking reveal. The investigator handed the judge another document. A death verification request Emily had filed months before. It included a note she had hidden, never submitted. A plan for long-term replacement, not just temporary guardianship. And in it, a chilling line written in her hand. "Once he is gone, she will be mine. There will be no reversal." The court erupted in murmurs. Emily's plan was exposed, her control slipping. But then, the judge called a recess. And that's when I realized something terrifying. Outside the courtroom, my daughter wasn't with the state-appointed counselor. Emily had smuggled her out again. The authorities had no idea where she was. And Emily's final words before being escorted away echoed in my mind. "If you want her back, you'll have to find her before I decide. She belongs to me forever." The courthouse was chaos. Officers scrambled, trying to trace Emily's last known location. Every minute felt like an hour. My daughter was somewhere out there, and Emily's obsession had made her nearly untouchable. My lawyer grabbed me by the arm. "We have one lead," he said. "A property she still owns. She might have taken her there." I didn't hesitate. The house was the same abandoned property Emily had used before, the place our parents once owned. Windows boarded, the air thick with the smell of dust and decay. I had no idea what I would find, only that I had to reach her before Emily made another move. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. I crept through the hallway, the sound of my own heartbeat deafening. Every creak of the floor sounded like a gunshot. Then I heard it, a soft sobbing. My daughter. I ran. She looked up, eyes wide, trembling. "Daddy." Her voice cracked. I dropped to my knees. "Sweetheart, it's me. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She ran into my arms. I held her tight, afraid she would disappear again. Emily appeared behind us. "Stop," she screamed. But the police were already swarming the property, having tracked our phones. She was surrounded. She looked at me, a twisted smile on her face. "You think you've won?" she hissed. But I didn't answer. I held my daughter. The officers restrained her. She fought, but it was over. As she was led away, she shouted one last thing. "She'll never be the same." I didn't care. I only cared about my daughter. Weeks later, the court finalized custody. Emily was sentenced, psychological evaluation, monitored therapy, and a lengthy prison term. The child psychologist worked closely with my daughter to untangle the trauma. She had nightmares. She questioned reality. But slowly, she began to trust again. And then came the final truth about my death. The forensic team confirmed the body buried as me had been an anonymous patient with similarities to my past injuries, altered deliberately by Emily. No fraud on the legal side could have succeeded without her careful manipulation. The scars, the documents, the faked hospital records, it had all been part of her plan. But nothing could erase me from my daughter's life. Sitting in our new home, my daughter on my lap, I realized something important. The scars she carried weren't just hers. They were ours, mine, her, and the truth we had survived. She looked at me and whispered, "Daddy, I thought you were gone forever." I hugged her tighter. "I'll never leave you," I said. Emily may have tried to rewrite reality. She may have faked a death, stolen a child, and manipulated everyone around her. But some things are unbreakable. Love, truth, family. And in the end, that was stronger than any plan, any lie, any twisted scheme.